welcome to the Langley Adams Library. Thank you for coming to some of the Created Equal series programming that we've been having. We do have a few more programs coming up that I want to tell you about. The next one is actually this Saturday, the 21st. We will be showing the film documentary Slavery by Another Name, and that will be at 10:30. And on Monday, the 23rd, we will have Lee Thomas here to help with a community discussion, and that will be at 6 o'clock. And the following Saturday, we will be showing the film documentary Freedom Riders at 10:30, and that is Saturday the 28th. And then on the following Monday, June 30th at 6 o'clock, we'll be having a musical duo, Kim and Reggie Harris, coming to play, and Freedom Rider Mike Wolfson will also be here to talk. So it should be excellent. And today we have Paul Sedgwick here, who has been playing the banjo for decades now. And as you can see, he's brought various banjos with us. And I just want to read you a little bit about why we are doing this today on June 19th, also called Juneteenth. On January 1st, 1863, President Abraham Lincoln issued the Emancipation Proclamation declaring the slaves forever free. But it was not until June 19, 1865, when Union Army Major General Gordon Granger docked at Galveston, Texas, that the news reached the Southwest. From those Texas origins, the observance of June 19th as the African American Emancipation Day has spread across the United States and beyond. Juneteenth commemorates the end of slavery with speeches, poetry readings, interpretive dance, film festivals, theatrical performances, barbecues, picnics, parades, and family gatherings. Celebrated for a day, a week, and in some cities the entire month, Juneteenth is the oldest nationally celebrated commemoration of the ending of slavery in the United States. So we are going to attempt to also have a cakewalk, and we have various cakes and other goodies for after Paul Sedgwick's performance. So I hope you enjoyed the show.
Thank you.
Thank you.
To give you guys a real crash course in the history of the banjo, which, if you don't know, really is America's instrument. And that is true in so many more ways than you might imagine. Usually when I go and talk to people about the history of the banjo, the first thing that I have to say is, well, did you know that the banjo has African roots? The banjo is derived from an African instrument. And almost everybody says, what? No, I don't know, right? No. Every once in a while you find someone who has heard, a little bit or something about it, and they, have sort of an idea. But for the most part, we as Americans have been guarded from a vast amount of information about the history of the banjo. I started playing when I was 13, and I played for probably a couple of years before I ever found out that the banjo had African roots. And I found out from reading a couple of books. I had a couple of instruction books that were really popular in 1973. That's when I started playing, believe it or not. I'm a lot older than I look, and a lot older than I act. And in the backs of these books were really brief historical thumbnail histories of the banjo. One of them, you're going to probably hear, you probably will have heard of both of these people. This is Pete Seeger's book. The first publication, this is 1962, and that's the third revised edition. So I think late 50s was when the first one came out. I can't remember. But in the very back of the book, he has Appendix 3, starts down here, footnote history of the banjo. So actually I have a couple of images, so we can take a look at this. There's some interesting things here that I'm going to talk about later. So there's a page from Pete Seeger's book. A couple of famous paintings. The one on the bottom left is the painting you see, if you can see it over here in this chair on the right. That's actually a life-size reproduction over there. It's a very small painting from 1790s, 1800s. It's anonymous. People call it the Old Plantation. No one knows who painted it, but it has some important historical significance. But let's take a close-up look at the little instrument there that's on the left of that page on Pete Seeger's book. It says, below, an instrument played by present-day minstrels in a village 100 miles east of Dakar, West Africa. Dakar, of course, is the capital of Senegal. The strings of unequal length are held by friction of a simple loop. And if you look up on the stage, but you kids might want to look up on the stage and see if you can see any instruments up there that resemble the picture in Pete Seeger's book that was published in 1958 or 59. Do you guys see anything up there in real life that looks like the picture from in that book? Yeah? You're so shy. You see one? Which one? Point.
The one with the...
This one? It does. Well, it does. First of all, it's a gourd. It's a gourd-bodied instrument, and these are all gourds. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I have 5 instruments here that are gourd-bodied instruments. Anybody else have another idea which one that resembles the most? Especially if you read it says.
The one over here has a single loop.
Which one?
The one right in front of us over here.
Right here?
Yeah.
A single loop?
Yeah, everything's off of that top peg, right?
No.
Oh,
There's
no,
there are
I'm
3
blind.
pegs.
Sorry.
The 3 pegs. Well, in my opinion, this one is very similar. If you look here, the strings are held on just by knots. And I'm going to talk about that instrument in a little while. But so Pete Seeger's book was one of my inspirations. There's the banjo on the right side of the page. Joel Walker Sweeney, 1810 to 1860. The story goes, he built this banjo for his niece, who was left-handed. The 5th string peg protruded vertically through the neck. The peg is not shown there, but it would have been right coming out of this little hole right here. The other book, there were 2 books only that we were using, was the Earl Scruggs book. There's no Earl Scruggs. A little more obscure than Pete Seeger, but not if you're into country or folk music at all. Earl Scruggs is pretty famous. You know, he's the banjo voice behind. Well, let's do a little test. Let's play a little Name That Tune. I'll play a little bit of songs. So these are the songs that I heard when I was a kid that inspired me to want to play the banjo. So 1972, 1973, there were like 3 songs that everybody wanted to play the banjo for. And I'll start with the most famous one, I think. Raise your hand if you got it. You can name that tune.
Listen to a story about a man named Jed. Poor mountaineer barely kept his family fed. Then one day he was shooting at some food, and up through the ground come a bubbling crew. Coral, that is. Black gold, Texas tea.
Earl Scruggs song. Okay, that's number one. We had like 4 or 5 people raise their hand. Who wants to say the name of the song? You know the name of the song? Or just the TV show? The TV show, of course, was
Beverly Hillbillies.
Beverly Hillbillies. The song is The Ballad of Jed Clampett. The song, Ballad of Jed Clampett, same song. Okay, so here is the second most famous. Someone was talking about this earlier. Wait a minute, I'll start at the beginning. Here we go.
Here we go, Charlie.
Can you picture the characters?
Yeah.
I'm sorry. Okay. Thank you very much. Can you name the tune?
Dueling Banjos.
Dueling Banjos. Good. So it's kind of the reverse of the other one where you know the show, but you didn't know the name of the song. This one, people know the name of the song first, and then you think, oh, is that movie with Burt Reynolds?
But in the movie, it's an acoustic guitar and a banjo. Why is it doing
Yeah.
banjos?
Yes.
It's not really doing banjos.
Oh, well, I don't know how much time for extra side
Oh,
stories we
sorry.
have, but,
Okay.
well, there was the guy, it's not really that pertinent. I'll tell you really quickly.
Okay.
The guy who got the gig for that soundtrack, who got hired to compose the soundtrack for that movie, he ripped off these 2 banjo players, Arthur Smith and Don Reno, who had this thing called battling banjos. But the guy who got the gig did not give them credit for that, and he just kind of modified it a little bit and called it dueling banjos, and actually got sued and lost. So,
Oh, good.
which was good.
Yeah.
Right? So there's a little interesting side note. Okay, one more. We're going to go back to Earl Scruggs now. Okay, Earl Scruggs song. High five. Foggy Mountain Breakdown is correct. And can you name the movie? You're all gonna go like, oh yeah. Bonnie and Clyde. Whenever they were chasing the cars, were chasing the cars. Every single time. That was the car chase. So we had those 2 books to deal with when I was researching. Here's the historical sketch in Earl Scruggs' book about the banjo, and it's actually impressive that it's included in here. And what's included is the connection to the banjo, because often Southern folks are less anxious about talking about it. So this little piece in the book was written by Louise Scruggs, who was Earl Scruggs' wife, who was also regarded as quite a pioneer. Earl Scruggs, if you don't know, was the pioneer in that style of three-finger picking, which I was just playing. But Louise Scruggs is credited with being like the first Nashville country music agent. She really took control of her husband's career, and he admits, and everyone knows, that if not for her, he would not have been as rich and famous as he became. So she was sort of a pioneer in that regard too. But so she wrote this, which is very nice. Let me just read one little sticky point here that we have to take issue with. So I'm reading off of that page right there. There has been some discussion as to whether or not the fifth string was added by someone in another country at an earlier date than the Sweeney invention. She credits him with adding the fifth string. This banjo over here is a reproduction of a banjo directly from this period of banjo history, the 1840s, 1850s. So that's what she's talking about. And Joel Sweeney is credited with creating the five-string banjo. The dispute is, did he add the short string? Look at these banjos, they all have a short string on them. Or did he add another long string to a four-string banjo that already had a short string? You get my meaning. That was the dispute. So she addresses it. There were other five-string instruments before Sweeney's invention, but the strings ran all the way up the neck and were not constructed like the five-string banjos we know today. If the fifth string was added somewhere else, to our knowledge, it was done independently, while Joe Sweeney added his fifth string in 1831, oblivious to any existing similar instrument, and thus provided America with the instrument that she enjoys today and knows as her national instrument. This odd instrument with four pegs at the top of the neck and one peg sticking out of the side captured the heart of America and is known as America's most original and distinctive musical invention. She's a pretty good writer, and she's wrong about that fifth string. Here's a close-up of the Sweeney banjo. That's a photograph. In the Pete Seeger book, it's an illustration. So it actually is still in existence, this banjo that he made for his niece. Okay, in 1977, Dina Epstein wrote a book that revolutionized everyone's thinking about the banjo. Here it is. Sinful Tunes and Spirituals. Librarians everywhere should know the name Dina Epstein. I don't know if you've heard of her. She was kind of a legendary librarian turned author, just amazing person. She died a few years ago, but she became a real hero of the banjo history nerds like me, because she, the beginning of this book, it's the, the subtitle is Black Folk Music to the Civil War. So she's dealing with slave music and trying to get at the origins of that, which is a very, very difficult thing to do because it wasn't documented very well. But she went in and found all kinds of amazing citations and, illustrations. Here is, who can name this guy?
Thomas Jefferson.
Thomas Jefferson. In 1781, Thomas Jefferson wrote, this is 1781, remember. The instrument proper to them, slaves, is the banjar, B-A-N-J-A-R, which they brought hither from Africa, and which is the original of the guitar, its chords being precisely the four lower chords of the guitar. So as early as 1781, we had someone fairly prominent who recognized that this instrument belonged to the slaves. It was recognized as a black slave instrument, nothing to do with white folks, really. This photo, this illustration is in Ms. Epstein's book, and it's from a voyage by a traveler in 1687. We're going way back there. And he lived in Jamaica for about a year and a half. And let me just read a description of the instruments here. This is something that he wrote. They have several sorts of instruments in imitation of lutes, made of small gourds, fitted with necks, strung with horsehairs, or the peeled stalks of climbing plants, or with branches. These instruments are sometimes made of hollowed timber covered with parchment or other skin wetted, having a bow for its neck, the strings tied longer or shorter as they would alter their sounds. Sloan illustrates some of the instruments. 3-stringed instruments made of plant materials are, Sloan illustrates some of these instruments, and there they are. Number 1 in center, Negroes constructed from various boards. Their hollows covered with hides or skins. The smaller instrument, number 2, is identified with the Negroes, and banjo historians believe it is the earliest visual depiction of an early gourd banjo. That's the one that's kind of in the middle. And if you look up here in the stage, you might see an instrument that resembles, actually those first 2 there. There are a couple of things that resemble those instruments. There's Thomas. Okay, we're going to do a little audience participation, unscientific survey, all right? When you see an image of the banjo that you think depicts your idea of what the banjo is, and you like the image, then clap really loud, okay? If you see an image that, maybe it does depict your idea of what the banjo is, but you don't like it, then stomp your feet like this, okay? If you see a banjo that you're like, I don't get it at all, it doesn't have anything to do with the banjo at all, I don't get it, just doesn't work, then just silence, okay? And you can clap louder or quieter for how much you think the image, meets your expectations for what the banjo represents. So we can go ahead and start with this guy. I'll go back. So here it is. Oh, there's the first one. So you can clap for him if you think it's a really meet your expectations for banjo. Andy Griffith Show. Remember those guys?
Yeah.
Kind of a weird picture, huh? They don't have it together. The guy on the right and the guy on the left just aren't working. They're Grammy winners. The band has since changed. The woman on the right there is the only person left in the band, but it's still going. I'm going to come back to her later. Mr. Fat and Bill Scruggs, there he is, in their heyday. Recognize that guy? That's Bela Fleck and the Fleck Tones. It's an old picture. It's like Howard Stern.
It is.
It's not Howard Stern. It's Howard Levy. He's a harmonica player. But he was gone a long time ago. That's an old picture. But anyway. Bela Fleck is regarded as the absolute king of banjo. No questions asked by anybody. He's the best in the world. That is a banjo. Yep. Doesn't meet your expectations, though, does it?
Looks like a banjo.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is a banjo. You can clap for the banjo, but...
A little bit.
Famous, legendary North Carolina musicians. The Carolina Chocolate Drops studied with the fiddle player. He has since died, but they apprenticed with him down in North Carolina. Ah! There it is. There he is. He was not playing the banjo. It was all fake.
Oh,
that's
disappointing.
Isn't it? Oh! Yeah, right.
Yes. Very good banjo player.
He is, yes.
Yay!
Why are there so many songs about banjos? No.
I love that one.
Rainbows, you're right.
That's good.
This is a children's
Oh,
book called
yeah.
The Bonza. We're going to come back to that too.
Oh, yeah.
Civil War era picture, very rare picture showing a complete band of African American or slave musicians. Guy on the right is playing bones. It's got bones, banjo, fiddle, tambourine, the classic minstrel show band. Another famous picture. You see the banjo player?
Yeah.
Sitting on the deck. Black guy taking along. Very rare picture of an early picture of an African American woman playing the banjo. And here's our painting we have over here. And now let's go to a close-up of that banjo. So if you look about, if you go about a little less than halfway up the neck, it's really hard to see, but if you look at the original painting, if you look at my fairly nice copy over there, you will see that there is a peg on this gourd banjo, which illustrates that there was a short string, Louise, way before Joel Walker Sweeney was born. And that, you might recall that that painting is in the Pete Seeger book. He doesn't talk about it much, or whoever wrote his notes for him. Another old gourd banjo photo. All right, so let's go way back in time and forward in time at the same time. In 2004, I was lucky enough to win a grant, teacher's grant, fund for teachers, to go to Gambia, West Africa, to study the accounting. And this is the accounting right here. And I'm debating if I should do this very risky thing I was thinking about doing. I've done a show in the past where I played characters. It was completely a theatrical piece. It was a solo theater piece, not a lecture demo kind of thing like this. And when I first decided I wanted to do a History of the Banjo program, I knew that I was going to want to play characters that were black. I couldn't figure out how I was going to do that. I couldn't picture myself doing a solo theater piece, playing characters that play the banjo, about the history of the banjo without including black characters. So I have a friend that is a mask theater specialist, and he suggested that I make masks. And so I did this show for a while where I played 2 black characters and 1 woman wearing 3/4 theatrical masks. And what I did during the show, I would be talking about the minstrel show and blackface minstrelsy. We're going to see some images about that in a little bit. And as I was talking about it, I was actually putting dark makeup on the bottom part of my face, because that was the part that was going to be exposed once I put the mask on, and the orbits of my eyes. So I was talking about blackface minstrelsy and presumably actually getting ready to engage in it. And then I would transform myself into a character and not play a caricature, which is what those blackface minstrel shows were all about, slave caricatures of slave characters. So I did bring my masks with me. What do you guys think? Should I try one of them on?
Absolutely.
It's not going to freak out the kids over here. And I'll maybe do the beginning of the monologue that I used for that character. I haven't done the show in a long time. But he was my favorite character, this guy here. Just wait till you see it.
Is that a face of a real person?
No, what I did, the process you go to make these masks is you start with a mold of your face.
Right.
So I had a hard mold of my face,
Right.
and then I built on top of that with the clay
Right.
to make sure everything's in the right place. And I just kind of played and messed around with it. I do have other masks I can show you that are based on characters. The Horace Weston, who we'll see a little bit later, and Lotta Crabtree was my woman. She was sort of the original Shirley Temple. She was the Shirley Temple in the 1860s, 1850s, 1860s. She started off her career. She had a wildly famous, popular career, successful, retired a millionaire, which was very rare for a woman, let alone an entertainer in those days. But her mother was another woman behind the scenes that was keeping things going. All right. So I'll do the very beginning of the monologue, and I'll play the accounting, which is the instrument that I went to Gambia to study. I wonder if I should. What is that? Is that weird when I'm standing in front of this? Is it making it is kind of weird? I don't want to turn it off because then I have to turn it back on.
No, it's not weird.
I'll try to stay out of the way of it.
Just put the lens cap on.
Makeup. I would have makeup on the bottom because it's going to look very strange, even stranger than I already did without that makeup. You can see the remnants of it here. Music. We were playing music in a sacred place in the forest. We weren't supposed to be there. Our parents had told us, if you play music in the forest, the devil might come and take you away, and you will never come back. They told us. They told us it had happened before, and that the footsteps of the devil had been seen there recently. But we didn't believe them. We thought it was just a story. It was more than a story. The devil came. He came that afternoon to the sacred place in the forest. My sister screamed to try to alert the adults who were working in the rice fields. And then something hit me in my head and I fell to the ground. The last thing I remember, a white hand reaching down to pick up my accounting. The devil is stealing my accounting. What does the devil want with my accounting? My music. Okay, that's just the very, very beginning. He goes on and talks about being on this ship and stuff like that, but I can't handle that right now. So I will play a couple of the songs that I learned on the accounting. This is one that was made by Jola musicians when I was in Senegal and Gambia. And again, it's a gourd with this is the papyrus stalk. It's not wood. Papyrus, just like they made paper out of in ancient Egypt, I guess. It's got a very soft, pithy center to it.
What are the strings?
3 strings.
What are they?
The original strings would have been, we were told, a root of a palm tree that would have been dried and twisted and made into a string. These are just nylon fishing strings, is what they use now. Okay. Oyo, ali non da in the caro, da senera bambara. In the caro, da sengera bambara. Oh yo, ali no da in the caro, da sengera bambara. Okay. amusing. This technique is incredibly important, and the whole reason that I went to Gambia to study the instrument, and the whole reason it has been sort of brought into this conversation about the origins of the banjo. If you look closely, there is a short string on the side of the neck, much like a banjo that's had the string added, but it's tied on. And then the two longer strings are underneath it. And that's a very odd thing from a European standpoint. European instruments go from the longest on the top down to the shortest. You hardly ever have the shortest or highest pitched string on the top of the strings, right? But that's a very common thing in West African plucked lute tradition. It certainly is the
So
idea.
banjos now are not like that.
Banjos are like that,
Okay.
yeah. So here's my low string. It's on the bottom. It's the last one. Should be the highest string, right? And the high one on the top. And the effect that has is that this string I'm hitting with my thumb is a drone string. It just kind of blends in with the melody that the rest of the strings are playing. I'm going to switch over to a different one here in a second. This is hard to play. So the basic technique is I'm hitting down with the back of my middle fingernail on the lower strings, and I'm plucking up, you could say, on the, they call it the thumb string or the drone string, okay? Let me get the other accounting. Another thing that goal that I had when I went there was I wanted to be able to make accountings. So I made several that were tied on like that, so I learned how to tie that little knot. But then I also wanted to have tuners, because it's so much nicer. And I wasn't thinking that, oh, I'm beginning the evolution of the banjo all over again. But that really is kind of what happened, what it ends up being. Actually, Rhiannon Giddens, who is the woman in the Carolina Chocolate Drops, she was on one of the trips to Africa I went. I went twice. And she was on the second one. And we were studying the accounting together, along with a lot of other people. And when she learned that I was making them, she said, well, did you ever make one with tuners? I want one. And she brought them back, and she actually played on their first album. They have a little bit of accounting music on there. But, so I was inspired by that because she's kind of famous. So I was like, oh, a famous person's going to be playing one of my instruments. So I did it. And this is an exact copy of the one that she has. These are actually, they look like friction pegs, but they have little machined worm gears inside there. So they're much nicer than real violin peg style friction pegs. But anyway, it's easier to tune and play and all that stuff. I'll sing one more song for you on the accounting. Okay. Very cool music.
Is there an English translation to that?
There is. I did not learn to speak the language. That's Jola, which the Jola people, the Jola language is of the Jola people. They are the people who originated the accounting. which is the instrument that is most closest to the banjo that we have found so far. And I didn't learn the language, but I got sort of a rough translation. He's singing about it's the song written by this guy named Ekona. In fact, maybe this could, yeah, that's him in the middle right here. Very hard to see. That's Ekona. And this is their singing troupe. We studied with these guys. And John Buchan is the name of the troupe, which means the humble ones, apparently. And it's just, the song is about welcoming you. Say, yeah, come on, come watch our pretty girls dance. Come enjoy our show. That's basically what the song's about. There's Ekona again on the left with the accounting. Remy, the guy on the next to him on the right, he was, and also, and all the men played the accounting. The Jola guys did, but these two are sort of the best. Remy has polio, so he has severely, atrophied legs. Can't walk, but super friendly, amazingly generous guy. Ekona again. He was sort of the elder of the group, and he was my age, which made me really, and that was, 2004 and 2006, 10 years ago, so he was in his 40s. This guy was kind of rough, but an amazing accounting player. He changed his name to Jesus.
Okay.
I don't know.
Whatever works.
Yep. And this is Daniel Jata, who is credited with bringing awareness of the accounting to the banjo community through Banjo Collectors Gathering, which happens every year, that I sometimes go to. And his father played the accounting, but when he was a kid, he thought, stupid, it's this old instrument, old folk instrument, who wants to do that? But he grew up, and he came to America and went to school down south somewhere, I can't remember the school, but he got his MBA here in the United States, and was exposed to the banjo.
Oh, jeez.
And thought, that's like Dad's thing. So when he went back to, he actually was born in Gambia, but he lived in Sweden. And he his MBA, but because he was in Sweden, he was working as a janitor for a continuing ed, for school. And he offered a continuing ed class in African drumming, and then he offered this lecture on the connection between the accounting and the banjo. And this Swedish guy went and saw him and sort of adopted him, took him under his wing, and paid his way to come to America and stuff. There's Rhiannon playing with Remy, learning the song. Really, if you haven't heard the Carolina Chocolate Drops, you're missing out. They're amazing. Okay, this instrument was discovered in a museum in Paris about 8 years ago. And I have a copy of it right here. We're going to run out of time. I do want to do some more playing. But this was collected by a French traveler, I believe, in Haiti in 1841. But it was already like ancient and old, so they think it probably was 30 or 40 years old. So it was made around 1800 probably. This is a copy. This is not the real one, of course. This is a copy that I made. But it was inscribed by the guy who collected it. It's called a banza. And you might recall that there was that picture book that was illustrated by the Arthur guy. What's his name? Mark Brown. Illustrated this picture book called the banza. You might even have it here. If you don't, you should get it. It's a Haitian folktale. And Diane Epstein rewrote it, and Mark Brown illustrated it. And it's about this little goat that plays the banza and protects herself from the terrible tigers with her singing, her banza. But a Haitian folktale. So there's all these really cool little citations and things. And what's really striking about this is it was made by these Haitian musicians around 1800, and it's got friction pegs, which is a European element. It's got a flat fretboard, which is considered a European element, as opposed to a round stick type idea. And it has all these really mysterious markings on it. You guys can check these out later if you want to come up.
There's no bridge.
The bridge? Oh, there should be.
Oh.
Yeah, there is. It's in the bag over there somewhere.
Okay.
I was going to play it anyway, but it is playable. But we don't know how it was tuned, really. There's just nothing about it other than it's a banza, and it was collected in 1841, basically. This is my version of the old plantation banjo, which we took a look at earlier in the old plantation photo. It's also playable, but not tuned. I ran out of time tuning things up. I can't play everything anyway. We'll be here for 2 hours.
Are
So
those gourds?
Yeah.
these are all gourds, which is the gourd originated in Africa. All the West African stringed lutes are pretty much gourd-bodied instruments, like the big kora. Have you ever seen the kora? That big harp, amazing. It's a huge, giant gourd. You know, it's prevalent in Africa. Gourd-bodied instruments, and so early banjos were gourd banjos. So let's quickly move on to this one. This is a gourd banjo that I made. So the neck of this banjo I copied from a guy who lives in Wakefield. His name is Ed Britt, and he saw this banjo being advertised on Craigslist or something like that. It was before Craigslist though. And he recognized that it was probably something special, and he called her up and ran right over to her house and bought it. The original one has a maple hoop, like a cheese hoop, as the body. But it's clearly a very early minstrel banjo, probably from the 1840s. And it has this bulged neck, which we believe was used to facilitate them doing these tricks, because they were quite amazing showmen. But let me play a couple of minstrel tunes. See if you guys recognize this one. Sorry. I came to town the other night, I heard the noise and saw the fight. Watchman, he was running around saying, "Old Dan Tucker's come to town. Get out the way, old Dan Tucker, get out the way. Old Dan Tucker, get out the way. Old Dan Tucker, you're too late to come to supper." Old Dan Tucker was a fine old man. He washed his face in a frying pan, combed his hair with a wagon wheel, died with a toothache in his heel. Get out the way, old Dan Tucker, get out the way. Old Dan Tucker, get out the way. Old Dan Tucker, you're too late to come to supper. Yes, sir. Okay. And that is pretty much the way that song was played in around 1855. There are several books. I have a few of them over there, but that rendition of Old Dan Tucker is in this book from 1855, and I'm going to play a couple more songs out of this book. This is the first banjo instruction book, and it is written in music notation. You know, it's like taken very seriously. Once the banjo caught on, it was quite a phenomenon. Let me see if we can get on to, here we go. Here's Joel Walker Sweeney again. The top picture is just a portrait of him. Bottom picture is an illustration of him as his minstrel show blackface character.
Is it a woman?
No, that's a man. That's Joel Walker Sweeney. The absolute original, he's considered the original minstrel. He toured Ireland, England, met the Queen of England. He was like the Elvis of his day, in terms of, in more ways than one. I mean, he really was emulating black music, appropriating it, and turning it into this other thing. And now we're going to look at some disturbing pictures. So these are all photographs of men in blackface. Picture quality isn't always that good, sorry. You look at the shoes go all the way out. Absolute clown routine idea, yeah. Again, white men, bones and banjo. Nice little Irish boy, probably.
Right?
Most of the real professional guys were Irish or Scottish Irish guys. Sometimes fresh off the boat, you know. If they were great entertainers and funny, you know, great comedians, actors, they had instant work in America. They didn't have to come from down south. Joel Walker Sweeney himself did come from down south, and he did learn a lot of his playing from slaves. But then he, you know, quickly turned it into something else by modifying the instrument, adding a fifth string, a long fifth string, not a short one, and eventually turning it into this program that became a standardized. It was the first American pop music movement, and that's not an overstatement. This is actually a black man in blackface, because if you were going to do the minstrel show, you could be black, but you still had to be in blackface. That's a black man in blackface. This is more recent. This is probably 1920s.
Right.
And I'm sure there are folks here who can remember doing minstrel shows in your high school or in your community center. It was accepted right down to the 1960s, 70s even. There was an Irish TV show in the 1970s, I believe, that took it right to the 1970s, blackface minstrel show program on TV. Caricatures, of course, were very, very popular. People collect this kind of memorabilia. Of course, these are images that came out of the minstrel show, which was white men doing a caricature of black musicians. So you're seeing that when you look at these kind of things. But people who don't know better, you know, think, oh, well, this is what black folks are actually like. Love music, love to dance, carefree, happy. Happy, happy. Happy, happy, happy.
I guess Al Jolson was one of the
Oh yeah.
famous
Al
black
Oh yeah, absolutely. Eddie Cantor.
Eddie Cantor.
Eddie
Yep.
Cantor.
Yep,
Right.
absolutely.
The Philadelphia Mummers finally stopped in what, the 70s?
Yeah. So this was painted by William Sidney Mount in 1855. So this is kind of one of the rare artists who took on the image of the black musician in a respectful, you know, beautiful, realistic way. Although he was a detractor of Lincoln's. He did not like Lincoln. So things weren't as simple as good and bad, do like, don't like, stuff like that. Okay, we're going to move ahead really quickly because I'm almost out of time. I got a lot more to do.
Oh.
So the banjo became really popular through the minstrel show. And as the country changed, people's tastes started to change, and interest, you know, getting really highly paid for being a blackface minstrel started to kind of wane. But people who are professional banjo players didn't want that to happen. They wanted the banjo to continue. They wanted to, you know, continue to have work and stuff. So there was a movement to modernize the banjo, to move it away from the lowly image of blackface minstrelsy and slaves. And this is where the beginning, remember at the beginning of the show I said we've forgotten, we've been guarded from it? 1870s, 80s, 90s is when the curtain was drawn. And these guys started to say, well, forget about that, forget it. Yeah, it's true, whatever. But this is the new banjo. And the banjo was promoted, it was advanced into a really modern instrument. I have one here. This is a banjo from that period. This is an S.S. Stewart banjo, built right here in Boston. The centers for banjo manufacture in this time period were Boston, Chicago, the big cities, not down south. People playing the banjo weren't hicks. They were actually the wealthiest socialites in those big cities. And banjo teachers were marketing themselves to those people because they had money. So very, very common for a young lady to take lessons on the banjo. You know, and it was quite the thing to do. And we have more of this.
Pardon?
Obviously an extremely wealthy family. Look at that big giant, ginormous one in the back there. Banjos became, they made all different sizes so that you could have a whole banjo band. You know, bass, treble, the whole range was there in banjo form. So, and there are folks today who still, who get together and play some of these arrangements. Highly intricate, I'll play a couple of songs for you. Highly intricate, advanced music. You know, 50, 60 years before folk music. This is 1880s, 1890s. Folk music is 1920s, 30s. But we focus on that, kind of like when we're thinking of the banjo. There you go, guys. What do you think?
The shepherd family.
I could see you in those clothes playing a banjo. No? They're proud of their children, aren't they? That's a boy on the left in the front. That's his long hair. That's a boy, yeah. I think there's a picture of him somewhere just by himself. I don't have it here, but. Okay, and then here we have Mary Cassatt's banjo lesson, and which you can see over there. And then Henry Tanner was the son of a black minister, grew up in okay, I didn't say this at the beginning. Mary Cassatt and Henry Tanner. Henry Tanner painted the other banjo lesson. There's him in his studio, that one. He painted that one, and he was the son of a minister. He grew up in Pittsburgh area. Both Mary Cassatt and Henry Tanner grew up in Pennsylvania near Pittsburgh. They both went to the Pennsylvania Academy of Art. They both sort of became expatriates and moved to Paris. Mary Cassatt, of course, was studying with the Impressionists. They were both in Paris in 1891 working on these separate paintings called The Banjo Lesson. And I like to bring these to people's attention to sort of look at the paintings. I guess look at these. These are better to look at down here. And sort of compare and contrast. You can do a whole lesson with kids about color comparison and contrasting. You know, the social status and color. Similarities, there's obviously our similarities. Another thing that's kind of interesting, that in the Tanner version, you have the little boy very in front. He's being much more nurtured, I would say, right, than the little girl who's just kind of a bystander at her lesson, her quote lesson. Very, you know, standoffish, white, blue collary kind of thing. And here's Horace. Horace Weston crossed over from being a minstrel banjo player to being a classic banjo player. Classic banjo is the term we give to the period of banjo playing where it gets more intricate.
And
Let me
knickers?
do,
Look at those doves.
I have knickers.
yeah, fancy, huh?
Yeah.
Never had knickers.
But again, clownish at the same time. It's
Yeah.
fancy, but it's also reflects a sort of a blackface element. You know, it's not sophisticated. It's not. It's sort of hootenanny. It's sort of hootenanny. Let me play this little medley. So when I play minstrel banjo, I'm strumming down with the back of the nail of my middle fingernail, and I'm plucking up with my thumb on the top short drone string, the thumb string, which is exactly what I was doing on the akunting. And this technique is clearly delineated in all these banjo instruction books from the period 1850s, 1860s. This is exactly how these songs were played. Tune, but those are right out of that book from 1855. And now we'll contrast that with, I'll play a couple of other classic banjo tunes. And I'm going to play, this is more of a modern banjo. my SS Stewart, although it's very nice, and is the exact right banjo to play these songs on, it has a warp in it, kind of a lateral warp, and so your fingers kind of run off the fretboard. So I'm going to cheat a little bit. So here's a song from the 1800s, late 1800s, a song that the young lady would have learned in her lesson in the parlor. Sorry. That's a little bit of banjo parlor music from that period. All right. Any differences between how I was playing that banjo that you can notify me about and how I was playing the minstrel banjo or the accompaniment? What's stand out just, yes?
The picks.
I was using picks. I was using my fingers. I'm cheating. I'm using bluegrass banjo picks, which they would not have done. They would have played it just like that, but only with bare fingers. Like, for example, here, I'll try. This is more realistic. I can't do it because I need a thumb pick. Here. I'll just cheat a little bit. I'll cheat just a little bit. It is a nice little banjo. It's just really bad up here, the 5th fret. So I have no picks on these two. But it was 3-finger picking, which is really important to know because for a while people were saying that Earl Scruggs invented 3-finger picking. But in fact, it was happening way, 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 way before Earl Scruggs. I'll skip ahead. So yes, I'm using finger picks. I'm using my fingers, that's the important thing. And so they were emulating classic guitar. They were borrowing classic guitar techniques, the idea of composing banjo songs just for the banjo to try to advance the banjo, try to make people forget about its origins. Actively trying to get people just like forget about it, you know, move on. This is something new now. This is the new thing. But people still did play with the old technique, which is, we could call claw hammer or there is still a modern technique that uses the accounting technique, the minstrel banjo technique. It's called claw hammer today, or old-time banjo music. And helps if your banjos are in tune, but it's just a banjo, we'll go with it, right? drumming down with my fingernail, plucking with my thumb. It's a really popular style of playing the banjo that is, happening today. Clawhammer, old-time banjo. In fact, that's the style that the Carolina Chocolate Drops players specialize in. That's a song that they do a lot. I learned it from them. So let's do another one of their songs. This is called Sourwood Mountain. I said we, I mean we. Okay, this is a call and response song. So I'm going to sing out a line, and you're going to sing back a response. It's called Sourwood Mountain. Let me just play a little bit of the melody so you hear kind of what it sounds like. Rooster crowing on the Sourwood Mountain, hi-ho, fiddle-I-day. That's your part. Hi-ho, fiddle-I-day. Okay? You're gonna sing 3 times. The first 2 times is hi-ho, fiddle-I-day. The third time, pay attention, the third time is hi-ho, no fiddle-I-day. Got it? Hi-ho, fiddle-I-day. First time, hi-ho, fiddle-I-day. Second time, hi-ho. That's it. Got it? I'm gonna be watching you. Rooster crowing on the Sourwood Mountain. Hi-ho. So many pretty girls you can't count. Hi-ho, of time because I'm looking up there, and I want to answer a couple questions, but I hope you get the main idea. There's a lot more we could cover, of course, and a lot of stuff I didn't even talk about. But the banjo doesn't detract from the banjo to recognize its roots and to say it has these awful roots even. In my opinion, it adds to it. It makes it all the more American. And it really reflects the history of the whole country. I mean, beginning of slavery in the 1600s, there was something like a banjo there. And it was being brought all over the world, wherever those unfortunate people were taken. And it was interacting with European instruments and changing and morphing along the way. And ended up getting a stronghold in the New World, in those colonies in the Caribbean, and eventually in the United States, where it was really embraced as the first American thing, the first American cultural phenomenon, big phenomenon. And we don't want to forget where it came from. So now is at least one room full of people who are not going to be surprised if I ever meet you again and I say, did you know the banjo came from Africa? So thank you very much. Thank you to Diana for inviting me and all of the support systems. I enjoyed myself. I'll answer your questions if you want to get time. We're also going to do a cakewalk, I understand, so I'll play for that too.
Excellent.
Although I don't know how we're going to arrange that. We
Ladies
can.
dance to the table music.
Yes, yeah, maybe we should.
Usually they have like some kind of markers or something, and you have to stand on a marker, and then the winning prize is underneath. Or,
We might just need to dance.
We just might just need
Table.
chairs. Musical chairs. The cakewalk tradition does take its place, does originate in slave times. The way the story goes, there were certain times of the year when the more progressive, I guess, minded plantation owners, slave owners, would allow their slaves to have a little fun. So they allow them to dress up in fancy clothes and have a big party and a big dance. And that's where the cakewalk came from. It eventually became part of the minstrel show. There are several songs that have the word cakewalk in them. And so so when the minstrels are doing a cakewalk, they're impersonating hoity-toity slaves with fancy clothes who think they're all that. But it's a white man, even if it's a female character, it's a white man in blackface and raggedy, fancy clothes, you know, pretending to be a haughty slave. And that was one of the stock characters. That goes back to the cakewalk idea, which had its origins in a real thing, which was letting the slaves have some fun and dress up and have a party. So I'm not sure how we're going to do that, but I'll answer any questions. If you guys have any burning questions that I could try to answer, I will. Let me just, while we're doing that, I'm just going to, oh, there he is. Okay. Yes, sir.
Yeah, how is the one that's tied off to?
You literally just, you put your foot against the gourd and you grab onto these bindings and you pull it up, or you push it down a little bit. It tears out your fingernails. It's awful. It's hard to do. I actually use a spoon. Most people, well, there's not a lot of people who do, like maybe 10 people playing the attention, right? You put a spoon under here and you hold on to that and pull up on it like that. Yes, I was the first American to go to Gambia to study the conch. Now there's 11, I think.
Wow.
Yes.
Are all the fronts goat skin? Or
These are all goat skin. They use goat in West Africa a lot. They also use pig and beef, but it's more rare. Goats are much more common. In older times, you know, they would use monkey skin. Monkey skin was a very good skin, apparently. This, I believe, is calf skin. More modern banjos moved into calf skin because a higher grade material, you know, nicer finish when you groom it and bleach it and stuff like that. But either goat or calf skin. Yeah.
How do you dry the gourd?
The gourds dry themselves. For a long time, I was a member of the American Gourd Society. I would go to their meetings in Ohio every year. It's a true thing, yeah. And you know, there would be growers there with gourds, and you could just see gourds by the thousands, and and buy them, and people make these amazing things out of gourds that, you know, Oprah Winfrey bought a gourd from somebody for $30,000. Some woman was fine art crafting. But the gourds are just they naturally dry out if you just leave them alone. They get all nasty, and it looks like you should throw them away, but don't, because it's just mold. You can wash it down with a little bit of bleach while it's happening. The problem is, gourds that we grow here, I'm talking about hard-shell gourds, which are different than the little ornamental gourds. Hard-shell gourds, I've seen people have them in their farms here, but usually the growing season isn't long and hot enough here to get a really thick, really good gourd. So you can get them to dry out, but you can like push your thumb like it's styrofoam, like just because they're so thin-walled and just not. The gourds, most of the gourds I have are from, well, Africa or California. Southern California, there's this place called the Welburn Gourd Farm, and they've got gourds that are like that thick, you know, the wall is that thick.
So they're dried whole, and then you kind of carve them to do the instrument?
Yep, they dry out, and then you scrub them. You have to clean off the outer skin. It's all nasty looking because was moldy probably, and then underneath it is a nice shell. And it's going to last forever. Nothing's going to harm it. You know, it's not good to eat. It's you know, and the original of that has been around for at least 150 years or something. So
How did it become an open back instrument? It went from a closed back and a board, and then it looks like most of them are all open back. Why was that transition made?
So I didn't talk too much about this banjo. This is a reproduction of a banjo that was designed by a drum maker, William Boucher. He and Sweeney, that's not Sweeney, teamed up to try to manufacture banjos for the first time. They were the first guys to commercially produce banjos. And gourds are not reliable for that kind of thing. They're not reliable if you're throwing it in the back of your wagon. They're not reliable to get a consistent gourd that's all going to be the same size. So it's just a natural thing to get someone like a drum maker who's already making basically what this African element is, which is a drum, and make that be what a banjo is. So that's definitely probably the biggest change or alteration that you could say Europeans made in the development of the banjo. You know, moving from a gourd to basically a cheese hoop. That's what, you know, the first banjos. There are a lot of homemade banjos that people just made in their house, you know, for themselves, around that are made out of old cheese hoops, maple rim banjos like that. I don't know if that answers your question. If you look at it, you really can see that's just a drum.
It's a drum with a stick.
It's a drum with a stick.
It's a drumstick.
It's a drum with a stick, just right from the very beginning. Anything else?
Do you have a website?
I have a website, yes, PaulSedgwick.com. It used to be more focused on this show, but since I don't do the formal solo theater piece anymore, hardly at all, now it's kind of more about I'm doing some writing these days. So, but yeah, I do have a website, and there is a section still on there that is about the show and has a lot of the pictures of the instruments and stuff on it. There's all kinds of websites out there in banjo history. This guy named Shlomo Pestko has the most amazing stuff on the history. That he got so into the history stuff. He read every single book that anyone ever wrote and incorporated it into his stuff. I mean, there's a lot of stuff out there. So I don't make that my thing, is to have a website about banjo history so much. So, all right, what should we do for a cakewalk?
I think people can just strut their stuff over to
Okay.
the cake. So do your best dance over to the cake and snacks. Take as much as you'd like, enjoy, and then please, if you would, fill out the surveys. The program was sponsored by the Gilder Lerman Foundation in partnership with the National Endowment for the Humanities and Bridging Cultures. And a great big thank you to Paul Sedgwick. Thank you all for coming. And please come to the next meeting. Yeah. Yeah, you can just write in Paul Sedgwick. Or banjo,
I can't imagine where she would just bring her. She will grow up and maybe have children of her own. And you can sit back and go, what was it?
Dance on over and get some cake? No. Why not?
Not dancing.